All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Professional Development. Um, this week we are going to dive into our first lecture. Covers the first chapter of our text and kind of look at we're really going to look at what it's really like to work in criminal justice. So I titled this lecture The Realities because we're going to look at some myths and then we're going to look at the realities associated with work in criminal justice. So if you've never had an online class or never had an online class from me, a little bit of forewarning. I upload the PowerPoints so that you have a copy of them that you can follow along. I do strongly encourage you to take notes. I know that we don't have exams in this class and things like that, but a lot of information is going to be given to you about working in our system. And so I would strongly encourage you to watch these lectures through to make sure, that you are paying attention and kind of taking notes as we go along. All right, with that, we will begin. So I want to start this week off by asking you a simple question. Why are you here? Why did you choose criminal justice? Did you choose it because of something you saw on TV? Did you choose it because of personal experiences? Why did you choose to go the criminal justice route? This is going to be a very important question. Knowing your why is going to help you succeed in whatever you try to do. So try to answer this question. Why are you here? Why are you going through this experience? Why did you choose to come to Georgia Southern and do our program? Why did you choose to go through a bachelor's program at all? In order to fully answer those questions and get the most out of your educational experiences, you have to be able to answer this question. So normally people would start off with telling you what criminal justice is, and you've probably had an intro class. You should have had an intro class. So I'm hoping that you know what criminal justice is. We're going to start out with what criminal justice is not. In order to fully understand what you are getting into as far as the workforce, you need to understand what it's not. And you need to have a firm understanding of what it's not. Because if you go into a program thinking that it is one of these things, you're going to be sorely mistaken, probably miserable, and probably not last. So criminal justice is not what you see on television. The media has done a massive disservice, I would say, in many instances of how our system is portrayed. So a lot of people get into criminal justice, me included. When I first got into criminal justice, I wanted to be an FBI profiler. I wanted to be a forensic psychologist until I learned that the majority of my job as a forensic psychologist was going to be testing. And that didn't sound fun. So a lot of people kind of formulate their career aspirations based on television shows that they've seen. Here are four of the most popular television shows that depict criminal justice. So you have Criminal Minds, CSI, Law and Order, Judge Judy. All of these shows are entertainment. And they are loosely based on the criminal justice system. However, if you believe that you are going to be an FBI profiler, you're going to learn that that position actually doesn't exist. And you're going to learn that there's a lot of misconceptions that people believe are reality. And I want you to realize those misconceptions now. That's the point of this class. It's a professional development class. It's to make sure you fully understand what it means to be a criminal justice professional and to get you ready to walk into a criminal justice job. But criminal justice is not the way that it is predicted in the media. So what is criminal justice? So now that we've kind of talked about what criminal justice is not, let's talk about what criminal justice is. So you should know that there are three components of the criminal justice system. There's the law enforcement, there's the courts, and there's the corrections component. Now, when most people hear criminal justice, what do they think of? If you go and tell your family, hey, I'm a criminal justice major, what do they say that you're going to do with that job? What is one thing that they probably think immediately? You're going to be a cop, or you're going to be a corrections officer. The criminal justice system is a vast system, and you can utilize a criminal justice degree in ways that you never thought you probably could. Take me, for example. Most of you know my background. I used my criminal justice degree and worked in child welfare. I worked as an investigator for child abuse cases. That was not necessarily in law enforcement. It was not necessarily in corrections. I had a lot of court aspects that I had to do, but my degree helped prepare me to understand the court system and how all of these interplay. Now, in child welfare, did I interact with each of these components? Absolutely. But there's so much more than just these three components. Cybersecurity, loss prevention, regular security, things like that are out there. And I want you to start looking at potential careers that you want. In fact, one of your assignments in this class is going to be to find some job announcements. Think broadly when you do that. What our program is meant to help you fully understand the system, the legal system, the court system, law enforcement systems, correctional systems. But there's so much that you can do within those systems. So let's talk about some common myths that people have around criminal justice. And when they enter criminal justice programs, these are some common myths that I have seen just in my time. So the first myth is people come in wanting to be FBI profilers. You know, after all, we've seen Spencer Reid and Criminal Minds and Agent Hodge and all of that. Well, the reality is that there is no position in the FBI that is for a profiler. The Behavioral Analysis Unit is made up of special agents who are law enforcement agents whose focus is to look at behavioral patterns. They utilize interdisciplinary studies around psychology, criminology, victimology, things like that to quote unquote profile offenders. However, there really aren't what you think of as FBI profilers. That is not a position. So if your goal is to become an FBI profiler, sorry to tell you, that position doesn't exist. However, if you do want to go into the FBI, there are plenty of avenues to go into the FBI, and I would encourage you to look at the FBI website. You don't have to have a criminal justice degree to get into the FBI. They take accounting degrees, they take education degrees, things like that. So the next common myth that I hear is I want to be a detective. but I don't want to work in the jail, and I don't want to be a patrol officer. Well, we're going to talk about the reality of that. The reality of that is that wanting to be an entry-level detective is like wanting to win the lottery. That actually rarely ever happens, if ever. In fact, in law enforcement, you should know that it is a hierarchical system, and you have to start at any place that you start from the ground up. You start in entry-level positions and work your way up through the ranks. To become a detective, most agencies require you to be a road officer for a certain allotted amount of time. And the reason is, and your book talks about this, and it's really the truth, you learn on the job. So you're going to have a degree. You're going to learn theoretical concepts in your degree. And then if you do go the law enforcement route, you're going to go through post-certification. And so that's an entirely separate program that your agency would pay for to send you to. Most of them most post-certification programs are at GPSTC, which is the Georgia Public Service Training Center in Forsyth, Georgia. And so that's where your police academies are. The GBI Academy is there. DJJ has an academy there. But you're going to be sent through those programs to become post-certified and mandated. And then once you're certified and mandated, you're going to go on the road. And you have to fulfill those obligations. Post-certification teaches you the policies and procedures of being a police officer. Road experience teaches you how to take what you have learned and apply it to real-life scenarios. And so you have to learn by experience. And so in order to do that, you have to be a road officer or a jailer. And a lot of times getting a job with a sheriff's office, you typically start out as a jailer while you're waiting to go through post-certification and mandate. And so you get the experience of working in the jail, learning how that system works, and then going on the road, learning how that aspect of the agency works, and then you can move up. So realistically, it takes probably about 5 to 6 years before someone becomes eligible to be a detective, because they're learning that agency. They're learning how to apply the skills that they have acquired to the job. And then finally, the final myth is known as the CSI effect. And the CSI effect, I have some videos linked that I want you to watch. But essentially, the TV show CSI has distorted regular population's perceptions of forensics and truly the investigation standpoint. So the CSI effect states that juries expect more as far as forensics go in order to be able to justify a conviction. And juries typically are disillusioned at the process. Now, we know in criminal justice that, one, you don't necessarily have to have forensic evidence to convict. And in fact, getting forensic evidence is quite rare. Crimes don't get solved in an hour. In TV shows they do, because they're only allotted an hour. But in reality, forensics takes months, if not years, to come back. And you may or may not get matches. You may get partial matches. But juries have this high expectation because of their perception based off of TV shows like CSI. And so the myth of the CSI effect really kind of dampens prospective students and prospective populations when they look at criminal justice. Now, hopefully, you have gotten over the CSI effect, being that you've had some criminal justice classes before. But if you haven't and no one's told you, crimes don't get solved in an hour. And uh, most of like your crime scene jobs either have some natural science background or are law enforcement officers. So if you are interested in actually analyzing the evidence, you typically see more people with chemistry, biology backgrounds. But if you're interested in actually being at the crime scene, gathering the evidence, things like that, you're more likely to go the law enforcement route, because the sheriff's offices have officers that are crime scene units. All right, so now that we've cleared up some common myths, let's talk about the realities of criminal justice. And guys, I'm going to tell you, this is going to sound very negative. It is not. I start this class off with this presentation specifically because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that you know what you are getting yourself into if you decide to go into a career of criminal justice. You know my background. I've been a practitioner for 12 years, and I have experienced everything that we're about to talk about. And tell you that I pulled my personal experience into some of these scenarios. So this is real life stuff that you have to be okay with facing on a daily basis, because that is the reality of what it's like working. The first reality that we're going to talk about is stress. Now, you may be rolling your eyes and like, Mr. Dean, I know stress. They've told me stress. I want to reiterate, this job is stressful. Criminal justice or any social services field, any field dealing with the public is stressful. I would argue that criminal justice is probably one of the more stressful positions in the public because of everything you're dealing with. So let's talk about some of the stress. A lot of work, if you go into law enforcement, you might think you're going to be solving crimes. You're not. A lot of work are going to be first responders. You're going to see a lot of things that are going to shake you to your core. You might be a responder to a fatal accident and have to be the one to find the body. You might be responding to a domestic violence call. Those are some of the most dangerous calls for law enforcement to ever encounter because of the unknown. Domestic violence calls typically have the highest rate of violence associated with them as far as interaction with law enforcement goes. You see a lot of shootings, a lot of things like that. If you enter law enforcement, you are going to have a heightened sense of protection. And I say that in the fact that you're always going to be worried about your safety. There's always going to be stress on your shoulders to get home at night. You never know what the situation is that you're going to get into. One call can be for a cat in a tree. The other call can be for a 4-car pileup with 3 infants being thrown from the car. And you are the first responder and have to see that. The next call may be a riot breaking out and you having to don full riot gear and having to work crowd control. So law enforcement in itself is inherently stressful. But let's talk about some of the other positions. I didn't work in law enforcement. I worked in community corrections. I worked in probation. I'm this guy up here. Caseloads can be stressful. When you are a probation officer, community corrections officer, or if you work in the court system, you are typically given a caseload of so many individuals, and your caseloads can range from 10 to 40 to 60. If you go into child welfare, like I transitioned into, as an investigator, my caseload got up to 80 cases at once. And so cases don't stop coming in just because you feel overwhelmed. You have to learn how to deal and manage that caseload. And so that causes stress. That causes a lot of anxiety of, I have multiple fires burning, which one do I choose to extinguish? Or multiple cases are blowing up, which one do I focus on first? So stress is something that you have to learn to deal with healthy if you enter criminal justice. You are going to be learning about secondary traumatic stress and vicarious trauma this week, and in fact, one of your assignments has to do with secondary traumatic stress. I really want you to kind of look at the resources, really kind of make sure that you're okay with that, because secondary traumatic stress is something that I have personally experienced. Some of my first cases right out of training for DFACS was child death cases. And so I had to go in and view the body, view the reenactment. I had to sit and listen to police interrogations. I had to do social summaries on family and things like that. Then when I worked for DJJ as a probation officer, I designated felons who had killed people, who had brutally raped people. And so listening to those stories, reading those cases, reading the details of those cases gives you trauma. While it might not be primary trauma, you are traumatized because you are dealing with the worst of humanity in some sense. And so you have to be mentally prepared to be okay with dealing with that and coping with that in a healthy way. And a healthy way means not drinking, not turning to drugs, not doing anything like that, but truly finding a balance of how you deal with that and not let it affect your personal life, not let work consume you, and things like that. So stress is a major reality for criminal justice professionals. Let's talk about work-life balance. Now, I want you to take a moment. What does work-life balance mean? Well, I put this quote on here because it's one of my favorite quotes. And it says, balance is not something you find, it's something you create. And no truer words have been spoken. Work, in essence, talks about how do you manage your personal life and keep it separate from your work life. And when that stress that accrues from your professional life starts weighing heavily on you, how do you not let it affect your personal life? Or how do you get away from that stress to de-stress? And a lot of professionals find this work-life balance difficult. I found it incredibly difficult when I was in the field, just because, especially in child welfare, cases were coming in nightly. I had anywhere between 20 to 80 cases at one point that I was responsible for. And so I would spend long hours at work, come home, spend long hours working while I was at home, not really taking days off, having days that I could take off, but never utilizing those days because if you took a day off, nobody stepped in to do your job. So everything just kept piling up. And so you were afraid to take a day off from work because there would be more work for you when you came back. Finding a work-life balance is a true skill that you have to find. And some of the reality is, um, especially if you go into law enforcement, you're not going to walk into law enforcement, into a police role, and get a day shift position. They are going to give you the crap shift. You are most likely going to work night shift, and you're probably going to be on night shift for a long time. You're going to work long hours. In the courts, you are going to work long hours because there's a backlog in court cases. You are probably going to have a long list of things to do that you just keep adding to. You are probably going to be inundated with paperwork. So if you think that you're going to go into criminal justice careers and it be a 9-to-5 job, well, a lot of times it is a 9-to-5 job. But the realities are that there's going to be times that you're going to have to work late. You're going to miss things if you don't have a dating life. You've got to find a balance to where you say, okay, I'm cutting this off here, and I will start on it tomorrow. Your book kind of goes into detail around some of the realities. These are just some visual representations. Like, you're going to be tired. I was tired a lot in my career. You're going to be traveling. If you're not going into law enforcement, let's say you're going into community corrections. Well, when I worked for DJJ, I had kids all over the state at state YDCs that I had to visit. So I would start my days some days at 4 o'clock in the morning because I was in North Georgia and had to travel all the way down here to Savannah. So that's a 6 to 7 hour car ride. And then I would visit for an hour and then drive 6 to 7 hours back. And then have to turn around and go back into work at 8 o'clock the next morning. So there are going to be long hours. There are going to be times that you're not going to be able to maybe meet friends after work because you have paperwork and deadlines that you have to meet. That's the reality with any job, but especially in criminal justice. You know, you might get caught up in an emergency situation and can't be home until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And you've been at work since 7 that morning. That's just some of the reality. So finding a work-life balance is key to success. Being able to set boundaries is a key to success. I used to tell everyone whenever I trained new hires, we had on-call shifts. And so I used to tell everyone, if you are not on call, turn your phone off. It's okay to do that. If you're on call, then you got to be on call. But if you are not on call, turn your phone off, because that is a boundary that you set for your own mental health and your own work-life balance, so you can still enjoy and not get burned out. So those are the two major realities that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of in criminal justice. You have tremendous stress with this job. No matter which part of the criminal justice system you go into, it's going to be stressful. You're going to learn more about secondary traumatic stress this week. Please take that seriously. Read all of the information that I've put there and really think about how you would handle vicarious trauma. Trauma that necessarily you may not have experienced yourself, but you gather because of the circumstances of the position that you're in. And so I'm going to end this presentation with the same question I asked you at the beginning. Why are you here? Why did you choose criminal justice? Why are you in a criminal justice program? If you can't answer that question, I want you to use this week to figure out why you are here. Answer your why. What drew you to working with people? What drew you to upholding the law? What drew you to working with those less fortunate? I want you to write that down and keep it with you. Put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it in a journal, put it on your mirror. Because when times get hard and when that work-life balance seems like it's overwhelming, you need to pull out that why to remind yourself why you got into this position in the first place. That's going to help refocus you and re-energize you. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've done it a lot. I always have had a why, and your why changes over time. But going into this class, you need to be able to answer the why. The rest of this class, we're going to talk about the how. How do I go about landing jobs? What jobs are out there? How do I have a resume? How do I have a cover letter? All of that stuff will be answered. The hows will be answered. And I can help lead you through the hows. I can't help lead you through the why. You have to answer the why for yourself. All right, that concludes our lecture for this week. Make sure you review all of the videos that I have up. I have some extra reading, some secondary traumatic stress reading, things like that you will need to make sure you do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I have my office hours posted now. If you are on the Statesboro campus, feel free to drop by. If you're not, feel free to shoot me an email and we can set up a virtual meeting. I hope you all have a great week, and if you need anything, I'm here for you. Bye.